America. Nowadays, this country is confusing and hectic to grow up in. With such divisions and partisanship, it's hard to ask the question, what does it mean to be an American? And come up with a positive answer. But what if these differences and divides are what it means to be an American? And what if that's a good thing? In America, people are allowed to have different opinions. We're allowed to disagree because of one right, freedom of speech. So we decided to interview some local experts on freedom of speech.
My name's Emma Minardi. I'm one of 3 co-presidents of Johns Creek Youth Advocates. Really, if you think about how America began, it essentially began as a protest. There was this idea of people having the right to break a social contract with a government that didn't properly represent them, and having the right to create something that did properly represent them. So that idea of revolution and activism is embedded in what it means to be an American. Freedom of speech is so important. I think it's one of the most important rights that we have, because we live in a democracy, and the entire point of that is that our citizens are supposed to have a say in what happens in our government, in our country, and in our daily lives. And it can't truly be a democracy unless speech is free. I say that America is great because we have the right to free speech, and because we have the ability to protest, and because we value dissent.
Our founding fathers set a precedent when they declared their independence from Great Britain. They wanted freedom from tyranny. They wanted freedom to speak their minds. A tradition of sorts had been established, one that persisted for many years. In 1854, a man named Henry David Thoreau published an essay entitled The Duty of Civil Disobedience. It became the most essential piece of protest literature in American history. In it, Thoreau explains that each man has a conscience that they should follow before any law, and that it is the duty of any man to resist a morally incorrect government. Thoreau believed that the most American thing of all was dissent, an idea that now permeates American culture. We asked local American literature teacher Ben Schultz for more insight on the influence of this essay.
Civil disobedience, definitely, and I guess the idea that you have a moral duty to reject problematic dictates of the government is sort of a foundational idea, or that is a foundational idea for a lot of some of the major movements of the 20th century that we think of as associated with freedom. So Martin Luther King was an advocate or a fan of Henry David Thoreau. So was Mohandas Gandhi in India and stuff. And so those ideas, when we think of some of the major revolutions, not just America but worldwide, an American theorist sort of paved the way for those.
So for generations, Americans have believed not just that freedom of speech is a privilege, but that it is a duty, even if the opinions they voice aren't particularly common.
When you see things happen in this country, ideas that aren't popular in their time, still being held publicly, people are standing behind them. Back in the 60s, civil rights activists weren't popular. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, gay rights activists weren't popular. Currently, student activists aren't always popular.
Democracies need change to function, and most changes come from the presentation of ideas that aren't necessarily popular to start with. These ideas then become more normalized and begin to spread through different mediums.
Popular literature has been sometimes a vehicle for that kind of stuff. So you'll see social messages and sort of advocacy of different freedoms, even in stuff like Stephen King or H.P. Lovecraft or comic books like Watchmen. America's kind of been at the forefront, I think, in some of those other mediums that are thought of as kind of less classy or maybe trashy or whatever, especially graphic novels, being used as sort of a template to talk about freedoms and stuff like that.
So what does it mean to be an American?
Really, being an American is at its base about protest and trying to use individual agency to move things forward. Being American is about speaking out and using your voice to push those debates forward.
I would say that the ability to use freedom of speech to express unpopular opinions and make a difference in the world is what it means to be an American.
From the American Revolution, to the women's suffrage movement, to the civil rights movement, to the present. Dissent is the core of the American identity. Differences that seem like they cause divisions are really the one thing Americans have in common. It is our greatest strength. So what does it mean to be an American, a young American, in this day and age? Maybe it means to disagree sometimes, or maybe to protest, or maybe being an American just means using your voice.